Welcome. Today's post is Elephants and Peanuts. Published on May 31, 2023. Have you ever wondered why Republicans are symbolized with elephants? Here are the topics we'll be decoding today. You can always find this list in the description below. If you enjoy this video, please press the like button and subscribe for weekly full-length blog posts and shorter, more shareable videos. Let's begin. Some words have multiple meanings despite sounding exactly the same. Found. It can mean to found a company, but it can also mean you found something like my blog page today. You know the difference based on context. Symbolism comms can also do this, and the trick to decoding is sometimes just recognizing the most popular variant of an already established symbol. In the USA, what does an elephant often symbolize? This doesn't mean every elephant in pop culture is a symbol for Republican, but it does mean some probably are. A's elephant. For example, how about a pro baseball team with an elephant symbol? Years ago I decoded this pro baseball team with an elephant mascot as likely symbols of Republicans. This connection is much stronger with more research. For example, notice they switched to a mule specifically to associate themselves with Democrats until 1980 when they switched back to elephants. Interesting timing, as that's when Ronald Reagan beat Carter. They promised to bring back the elephant during Reagan's first campaign, and they followed through in 1988. So all of this is to say there's a very good chance that A's elephant is a symbol for Republican. Literally a fundraiser for him. I bring it up because this week on Twitter I made a prediction about the A's based on this decode that came true. The elephants have been on a historic losing streak. I tied this elephant losing streak to Trump's losing streak as of late. I then went on to suggest that later that day that elephants might break their losing streak given it was Memorial Day and their opponent was Atlanta. Atlanta being 30330, which is Joe Biden's code. Particularly tied to downfall, so I thought perhaps this would be tied to the inevitable fall. It was at this point that I realized the game was happening literally as I was making the post. Atlanta was winning by 1, but I still implied it could turn around. Did it? 5th inning comeback after 55 games. Which is exactly when I was expecting it. Why 5:5? Clear communication symbolism. Anyway, I thought that was neat. You may start to think that everything the A's do is connected in some way to Trump, but don't get ahead of yourself. It may just be limited to the losing streak. The symbol of intentionally losing is something that makes sense to have broadcasted globally so that everyone knows that at that point in time they are going to have the world pile on top of them as part of a larger plan. For example, May 9, 2023, Trump sexually abused writer E. Jean Carroll must pay her $5 million. Notice the names of Carroll's lawyer and the judge. Both are named Kaplan. I've never that name before, and I deal with tons of names in decodes. Clearly intentional as a comm then, but what does it mean? Comms are contextual. The crucial detail here is the fact that they both have the same last name. The fact that the judge agreed with the lawyer with the same family name. The symbol is in the prosecution and judge being in cahoots rather than having an objective trial. This fits what we see as there is no evidence. The accusation is Trump is so demonic he sexually assaults, nearly, senior citizen women on a whim. The age is one of several elements that makes an already illogical story nonsensical. Thankfully this is all choreographed as already stated. It's one of several pushes going on right now to put Trump in the attack. The point of which is to prepare the environment necessary for unraveling Spygate. Does it make more sense for things to be going well or poorly for Trump before the unraveling? It makes sense that he is under attack from all sides. It is the only logical environment for what is to be uncovered. If things were going well, if he weren't under constant attack, would it even make sense for him to uncover a great darkness? How do you expose the truth when the very device that exists to expose the truth is what needs to be exposed? It's a catch-22. The only way to reveal the truth is to get mainstream media to agree to destroy themselves. That is what we are seeing. This is possible because many inside that system are sick of it themselves. I call them flips. The cartoonish level of idiocy you have seen over the past few years is not the result of actual stupidity, but intentional self-destruction. These actors suffer indignities because they know it will be revealed as the greatest magic show in the world. In history books it will be written as the most important narrative ever. This I believe, and I already went over the A's elephants, but there are many more that define what's going on now and into the future. Willow. For example, Willow, the new presidential cat. January 26, 2023. Biden confirms that White House cat Willow has no limits and sleeps on top of his head at night. What symbol is there in Joe Biden adopting a cat named Willow that sleeps on his head? As with most important comms, a pattern will help us solve it. What else has been going on with the name Willow? Two major things, and both are big clues as to what's going on. September 10, 2022. Willow Disney Plus. The first of which is a new show. Before I explain the symbolism of the show, the other Willow gives a clue. April 24, 2023. Many young voters bitter over Biden's support of Willow oil drilling. Notice Willow is a negative for Biden voters. What about the show? March 15, 2023. Willow cancelled after one season on Disney Plus. A show that underperformed was cancelled and pulled after just one season. Reconcile with Biden adopting Willow, one season equals one term. But there is much more to decode here. Notice his height. 2020 Willow cat born. 2021 Willow cat adopted plus sleeps on head, voters. 2022 Willow show begins/underperforms cancelled. 2023 Willow drilling angers Biden voters for not rejecting Willow. 2023 Willow removed from streaming. Why choose Willow as the comm? Because Willow the show is a remake of a 1988 film. So it's invoking whatever comm was invoked in 1988. Willow the film, just like the show, underperformed. It's famous as a movie for the star being Warwick Davis. At 3 feet 6 inches height he is far shorter than even Peter Dinklage, 4 feet 5 inches. What was the symbol of Willow released May 20, 1988? Whatever comm was sent through this movie surely had a real news event to tie it to. After digging into the news that day I found my answer. May 20, 1988. Dukakis is termed extreme liberal. Why is that the answer? I know enough history to know Dukakis underperformed. As a result H.W. Bush won big in 1988. So I wondered. How tall was Dukakis? 174 centimeters, 5 feet 9 inches. Shortest president since 1901. 5 feet 9 inches isn't that short, but president is not a normal job. It's a job where being tall is an asset. It is after all the ultimate father figure in the country. This tells us Willow was a symbol of throwing the 1988 election to the Republican. It fits perfectly with Biden doing things that kills his own campaign. The symbolism of war plus Wick plus Davis. Wick equals bomb to explode plus war equals countdown to war. Davis equals Civil War leader. Will plus low equals lack of willpower to war. I.e. not interested at the moment in war. Davis equals Democrat plus Confederate States president in Civil War. Throwing campaign is a sign of cooperation. Happy ending? No, have to keep the timetable in mind. This was after Murdoch bought Fox and launched mind-numbing television promoting MK instead of the original intent with content like Rush Limbaugh. Mossad side capitulating on brainwash instead of enlightenment. Important as the internet started, which had comms of dumbing things down in various forms of media. Bill and Ted traveling via phone lines, aka 56K, to learn history. A good example of this practice. That's what's different this time. Same path in having a choreographed self-destruction on the left, but this time instead of an agreement to make the country dumber. It's the opposite, with an agreement to bring things out in the open. That's what Twitter ensures after all. October 27, 2022. Elon Musk completes $44 billion deal to own Twitter, immediately fires 4 top executives. Defining himself as a free speech absolutist, and that is probably the only environment where what I do could exist. Baseball and movies, extra lives. When I went over the elephant of the days, before I tied it to things going on with Trump, but you may wonder, does that mean anything that happened in the future or past they did tie into him? It's not as easy to say whether any other aspect of the A's relates to what Trump or any in his orbit is, has, or may do in the future. I'm of the mind that most sports games are not rigged, it's only when they need to send a specific message does the rigging get put into place. This is the most likely scenario because it allows for constant games that can be exciting for the sport and others exciting for the calm. All while being highly profitable regardless of winning or losing. Not just profitable from fans but for throwing games at times when one party needs to send a message and requires another team to lose for it. Surely those rigs involve paying off the team to throw the match as those teams are likely to lose revenue the weaker they play. So while I don't think every A's game has meaning, the historic losing streak did. Much as I think the World Baseball Classic Japan vs USA had a lot of meaning with Japan winning. March 1, 2023, Japanese Toilet South Park episode plus JFK conspiracy. March 22, 2023, Japan beats US World Baseball game 3-2. The music used in the World Baseball Classic just so happened to be also used in the biggest movie of the year so far. Another oddity? The actor they cast as Mario, for whatever reason, was also the star of the other next biggest movie of the year so far. Chris Pratt. A man also starring in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which came out the same month as the Mario film. Q highlighted the first film in relation to a meme tied to James Gunn being fired for perverse tweets. Guardians of the Pedophiles. I still need to see Guardians to decode it, but I suspect his name, Pratt, is meant to invoke the symbol of pratfall. Someone intentionally taking a fall. Taking a fall can mean many things though. For example, here are some curious comms in 2021. 2021 execution of Mario, and then Elon Musk does a skit about going to court for the murder of Mario. What happened in 2022 after all these comms about killing Mario? Prime Minister who famously dressed up as Mario at the Olympics executed not long after. Reconcile with the skit. Sure, I died. But I still got 3 lives left. Notice this caused a sweeping election victory. Whether that was the primary goal or not is unclear, though I suspect it was getting certain people out of the way so that legal cases can happen in the background. This going after people in court is what is most likely to trigger rich people to hire killers. Using MK ops and other methods to protect themselves through fear. That's why everything has been so secretive. Bowser is played by Jack Black. I believe the symbolism of Jack is to invoke the Union Jack. Many from different countries coming together. This fits Jack, founder of Twitter, as well as Jack from Lost, as that show represented Facebook. Adding Black to Jack implies keeping ops dark. Bowser ritualistically sacrificing prisoners. The basic symbol of Bowser is a combination of a dragon with a spiked shell. Dragon is symbol of many people working together and fits with the army aspect. An army of shells. Shell symbolism on the other hand is of someone acting on behalf of another. People who deploy MK, for example, would usually be a shell of a larger entity that pay for the act. Movie begins with Bowser violently destroying a castle and taking out an army to steal a star. Star is a symbol of stardom, and I believe the symbol here is in the way MK ops that successfully remove an enemy are rewarded. Rewards can include having the sections of the media as an ally. This is star power. Jack plus Black equals Black Jack. It also invokes playing card comms, which I find interesting given Nintendo's origins. September 23, 1889. Nintendo founded. October 2, 1889. First Pan-American Conference. Nintendo's origin was in playing cards made for Russian prisoners. Probably a coincidence, but I'm still digging into this. The hero is Chris Pratt. A man also starring in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which came out the same month. A coordination of people who were blackmailed as they work behind the scenes today to ensure things are working smoothly. Notice the makes a turtle come out of his shell, as in exposing someone. They get to the Mushroom Kingdom by releasing a pressure valve, bar, that is flooding. This might represent the cases going on and what is being done to keep it running smoothly. Distractions while important things happen behind the scenes. Pratfall. But this is a very weak decode. The parts that are crystal clear is the comms tied to stopping human sacrifice and getting family away from hostage situations ASAP. This is clear because that's what most things are doing now, and this fits perfectly. I'm not confident in the movie decode, but it had been highly requested, so I gave it my best try. Perhaps after I watch the Guardians films it'll be more clear. While I can't properly solve this one, I do understand what can be done with forced errors. As in, whoever controls the blackmail is asking for a fall, and we already have Biden clearly tied to that fall, so that could be something that is coordinated. But this is a way bigger pool of possibilities than just one person. Intentional failure permeates most things that are perplexing bad. The original Super Mario Bros. Movie is a good example of a pratfall. Super Mario Movie 1993. This ain't no game, tagline. Famously bad and lost money despite being the most hyped brand in the world then. They were given media promotion for games only and promised to stay out of Hollywood. Parents took kids to see a movie expecting to see something like the games and were met with what? Intentional badness that bore no resemblance to the original. The new one is opposite in production and result. One thing it likely means is a lot more video game movies. Not a decode, just the obvious logic of what happens after such a big success. Plus the comic book film market might be able to alleviate oversaturation this way. But let's return to sports. I believe there is a semi-rigged approach across all sports. Which is to say, allowing certain star players to do special things which give them a higher, but not insurmountable advantage, allowing Babe Ruth to always home run, for example. Even games they lose they still have calm sent player to player. It ties into this week's subject too. Origins. Look again at the history of the A's. For example, the Oakland A's elephant mascot since 1902. What happened around that time tied to Republicans? Notice the original elephant is from 1902. That'd be when Teddy Roosevelt installed the White House owl. It's also the same year Teddy Roosevelt gets tied to the teddy bear. Also the origin of Peter Pan. November 1902, Peter Pan original story. November 1902, Teddy Roosevelt origin of teddy bear. Peter Pan peanut butter. I'll get to that later. For now let's take a step back and ask the obvious question. Republican elephant origins. Why is the Republican mascot an elephant? The official reason is in 1874 a prominent artist named Nast began characterizing Republican voters as elephants. This choice of animal is treated as an arbitrary one by official history, but is it? If not, what does it mean? Context is everything for symbolism. This cartoon involves a Democrat donkey wearing a collar of New York Herald newspaper, dressed as a predator scaring forest animals labeled as other newspapers. The elephant, labeled Republican voters, moves towards a cliff edge in panic. The intent at a glance with the title of Third Term Panic is suggesting the Republicans would soon lose White House due to panic. What was causing Republicans' panic? Keep in mind Republicans had just freed the slaves who starting in 1870 could vote. Who did they vote for? October 24, 1874. White League created, paramilitary arm of the Democrat Party, KKK, meant to panic black voters into not voting, as they would obviously vote Republican. November 7, 1874. Republican elephant origin. Panicked elephant rushes off a cliff over a pit of titled Chaos. Remember the donkey spreading panic was labeled New York Herald. October 24, 1874. Nast, White League KKK. November 7, 1874. Nast, New York Herald Third Term Panic. Plus 2 days. November 9, 1874. New York Herald, famous hoax involving escaped predators. Hoax, New York Herald spread about predators escaping zoo killing people. Nast was sending comms that not only established the elephant for Republicans but contextualized it in the form of a target for predators. He also illustrated the White League as the predator in question tied to the Democrats, and the New York Herald as their mouthpiece. None of this explains why the Republican is an elephant though, does it? Actually it does. The key point with these symbols is how the Republicans held the black vote. Elephant represents this relationship. Question: what did peanuts represent in the 1800s? Circuses in the 1800s would let people feed elephants peanuts. This is how elephants become tied so strongly to eating peanuts. This is partly because peanuts were among the cheapest of foods. The kinds of foods the poorest of people would eat, i.e. slaves. Peanuts as the food of the poorest become a perfect symbol for the black vote, especially when paired with the engorged fat Republican elephant. Let's look at that picture again with this context. A bloated, on peanuts, elephant rushes towards a cliff titled Panic due to a donkey scaring the wildlife. This is the precise point in history when the Democrats embraced the KKK as fear tactics. If this symbolic connection of black people to peanuts is correct, then who was the most famous black inventor? Washington Carver, famously synonymous with peanuts. Google's first result is George Washington Carver. A man famous for peanut inventions. He became famous not long after the Republican/elephant connection. One pop culture iteration of Carver put him in the same league as Leonardo da Vinci. This means he was a comms vehicle. A figure packaged to a populace that wanted an inspirational figure like Carver, i.e. a brilliant inventor that came from slavery. Just to reinforce the elephant connection. Carver's College. The first black college. Tuskegee. The nature of media control means famous people are almost always vehicles for an agenda. In Carver's case, I suspect the point was in giving the public what it was hungry for was as a way to herd them into accepting evils like segregation. It's no more fake than dozens of others figures I've decoded, like Leonardo da Vinci for example, but at least with this there's an inspirational element that can be admired. Just like how the elephant was meant as an insult, such things don't have to remain a stigma. Creating a painting, that was his original profession. Just like Da Vinci. A symbol that makes sense in terms of creating a public perception. His existence, just like Da Vinci's, was the painting, a carefully crafted image to present to the public that was desirable for certain parties. Creating an image of a genius in the public light is not as easy as finding a genius, it's an image. Looking through the reporting at the time reveals the mechanics of what they did. Notice his official backstory involves being kidnapped at 6 by bandits and being traded by Moses for a broken-down racehorse. This puts these ops as to the precursor to Mossad. Moreover, him being born in a place called Newton, Isaac Newton, and being exchanged for a broken-down racehorse, explains that he was used to offload inventions that weren't selling. It's a template I've decoded across many famous figures. For example, Galileo, died January 8, 1642. Newton, born January 4, 1643. The most famous inventor in the world dies and 1 year later almost exactly the next one is born. This is because they were both figureheads to get a larger audience and prestige for the teams of real inventors. Heck, I can even go back further. January 26, 1564. Council of Trent announcement about papal interpretation. February 26, 1564. Christ Marlowe baptized, second biggest during time. April 26, 1564. Shakespeare baptized. I'll be going into this more in the future, but the point is Shakespeare and Marlowe were both comms vehicles of the time. Carefully crafted to create tragedies, which had the goal of diffusing the war of the time between Protestants, Britain plus allies, and Catholics, Spain plus allies. This is why it's tied to the Council of Trent. The Order of Malta loyal to the Pope, which is the CIA origins. Origin in media control. But that's for a future post. Some of the stranger finds in this dig. He offered peanut oil massages as a cure for polio. And he revived an ancient Egyptian method to create blue. Egyptologists claim that one of his deep blue pigments amounts to the discovery of a lost process. This method of pushing public opinion for the black community didn't stop there. Malcolm X, for example. When I got this request for a decode, the first thing I did was look up his most famous speech. The answer was, bullet or ballot. Why is that important? It's important because the most famous moments always have columns marking them. April 12, 1964. Malcolm X most famous speech, bullet or ballot. April 13, 1964. Sidney Poitier first black man to win an Academy Award for Lilies of the Field. Successful op. Academy Awards are awarded to the most successful push. We know this speech was enormously successful, it's called legendary, so of course it won. They had comms tied to the prep for that kind of societal pushing. The movie's comms make these connections even more obvious. About someone of a different faith cooperating with a foreign clergy to build a temple. The speech was by a Muslim and used to mobilize a new political faction. Take that and contrast it with that season 1 South Park. Sidney Poitier presented as a legendary warrior that can turn into a giant turtle to attack the giant Jewish nose of Barbra Streisand. Symbolism of the history of ops warfare between CIA/Mossad. Sidney equals Disney, but that's just a guess on that symbolism origin. A more interesting parallel is made by asking who the two most famous people associated with peanuts are. Obviously Carver, but also President Carter. Famously a peanut farmer, and nuclear submariner. Jimmy Carter became POTUS in 1977. If you followed my posts at all, you know a lot about 1977 already. August 3, 1977, Senate hearing on Cultra. August 4, 1977, DOE created /Q clearance to handle nuclear material. Carter, code name was Lockmaster, was installed to change how nuclear material was handled. Nuclear material is a column for explosive and secret information. Check the intro page linked at the top if you aren't familiar with nuclear comms. I cover them pretty much every post as they are that important. Blackmail can't be talked about openly, and nuclear is how they get around it. Peanuts are also connected to these kinds of comms, specifically peanut butter. A comm distinct from peanuts and with a history strongly tied to Washington Carver. April 20, 1964, Nutella chocolate peanut butter launch. April 20, 1964, Nelson Mandela most famous speech, I am prepared to die. The symbol of a darker peanut butter launched alongside the most famous speech by Mandela in Africa. Nutella isn't well known in the USA, but Mandela was not in the USA. January 26, 2018, Nutella riots in France show price of a sweet tooth. I intended on staying focused on peanut/peanut butter comms, but the connection to the black political comms means I need to take a detour. Milk. November 27, 1978, assassination of Harvey Milk, first gay public officer becomes gay icon. November 27, 1978, I Will Survive debut on Love Tracks Gloria Gaynor, reader decode equals Gloria Gaynor equals glorify gay. Milk equals MLK. Intentional martyr created to invoke what MLK rallying cry post-tragedy did for the black community for the gay community. I Will Survive, time to the death, a message to comms-aware people that they are watching a show. The logic of invoking MLK for milk has an obvious motive when you look at the results. Here are just a few of the news reports from one newspaper on one day after he died. Millions given in foundation, books go into publication within hours, stamps demanded, parades begin. Was it a choreographed show? I was hesitant to dig into this subject as I would never intentionally diminish someone who had a positive impact. Last speech before death, he ends his speech talking about how he would likely be assassinated soon. He also gives reference to how Moses had to die so that his successor could lead his people to the promised land. MLK explaining how what was about to happen was necessary. If that was all I found, I probably wouldn't have shared it, but I dug deeper and confirmed it from another angle. Why was his name Martin Luther? Originally his name was Michael, just like Jordan/Tyson/Jackson, but changed to Martin. Who was Martin Luther? One of the very few people also on the most famous speeches list. Not a coincidence. Why invoke him? Martin Luther is also famous for a legal ruling permitting anyone to kill Martin Luther without legal consequence. In response, his allies wore masks and pretended to rob Luther. Instead, they put him into hiding while fooling the public into thinking he had been ended by criminals. This doesn't necessarily tarnish the legacy. Have to put things in context. This was another, most famous speech, holding to segregation forever. The point was clear in the comms that the goal was to push civil rights into hyperspeed. It did. Does that make it bad to trick the world? Can you think of any other way they could have unified the black community and motivate them against segregation? I'm not going to go into the morality, but tricking the general public is a long tradition I've been decoding. Whether that system is used for good or evil, it's outdated. Everyone can evolve beyond needing a magic show to hurt us one way or the other. This reality of a plan also gives a bit more clarity to his constant requests for nonviolent protests. An awareness of what was to come and the tragedy that might happen if not careful with the message. The three black leaders decoded are tied to elections. Likely that is the origin of funding's intent, which was translated into visibility. In fact, the first famous speech listed by Wiki by MLK and Malcolm X both have ballot in the title. MLK, give us the ballot. MX, ballot or the bullet. This connection with elections brings us back to blackmail, as regardless of skin color, faces are controlled in such a way. Peter Pan peanut butter. I said before I'd get back to Peter Pan peanut butter. November 1902, Peter Pan original story. November 1902, Teddy Roosevelt, elephant, origin of teddy bear, sleeping. One of the top brands is Peter Pan through a Disney license. Given the comms tied to Peter Pan, this already connects it. Though even without my decodes it already has a connotation of perversion, not just due to Neverland Ranch, but the basic concept. An adult in years but prefers the company of children. About kids taking medicine from the family dog or about the family dog giving kids medicine and takes them to Neverland. Notice Big Ben in the background famously. 1862 Alice in Wonderland inspired by children date on boat ride. 1862 Big Ben begins keeping time, symbol of keeping a record of actions, i.e. blackmail. It's a calm story much like Alice in Wonderland, both involve a clear use of drugs and an adventure only after they go to sleep. Prominent people visit a sedated child of a cooperating family. They get blackmailed, and the child is unaware due to being asleep. The comms exist to coordinate the practice. Also keep in mind the author is famous for taking photos of underage nude girls and talking in code. The Big Ben connection to keeping track of what happened is crucial as a symbol because remember, photography had just been invented. What symbol would you use to define having a record of something bad that happened? The powerful people of the day knew right away they could then use those records to control their partners forever. Thus they built a giant clock to symbolize keeping control of the time. Something that to that point had never been done before. In fact, the very name, Big Ben, tied to the Prime Minister of Britain of the time. The very person who would be most likely as the symbol for who would hold the strings of blackmail on the rest. This bears repeating. Photography didn't exist before Big Ben, or at least in a usable form. So how would you symbolize, in a public way, the ownership of blackmail? Simple. A clock. Because for the first time in history you now have a record of a specific time. And of course the codes of Lewis Carroll, because to talk about it in plain sight, otherwise of course they would be talking about things that would get them arrested. The child gets to fly to the second star on the right. This represents the rewards for participation. Stardom. This connects to the plot with Peter Pan leaving his shadow behind after visiting the sleeping children. Symbolism of photos taken. Capturing your shadow. Can you think of a better way to describe taking a picture in code? Remember, it was a new technology at the time. Making a peanut butter tied to this story gives it all of those potential connotations, but that's just one brand. We need to look at more. Keep in mind that with Peter Pan peanut butter we connect not just to children but photography. Ever heard of another peanut butter tied to photography? Or how about the step after that? Not movies, but animated photography. GIFs. GIF/GIF. July 19, 2022. GIF contaminated peanut butter lawsuit, evidence collection. July 19, 2022. For Chan GIFs metadata stripped on upload. GIF equals metadata on pictures equals evidence. Contamination. Evidence protection coordination. GIF was likely meant to invoke GIF, peanut butter as the history goes, then the creation of GIF might have peanut-related comms tied to it. And in fact. June 16, 1987. Michael Jackson UPS bid for Elephant Man. June 15, 1987. GIF debut, animated pictures online. Normally I don't include this much of an article, but I felt this was educational. The concept of creating technologies like GIF revolutionary way to hold animation. There is no chance in heck he is talking about literally getting bones, and so I'm fairly sure this is a case of sell me X and give me Y, as two entities controlled by the same forces, so you buy something from one part of an organization and then that org sends that thing not to Jackson but to some part of the empire that controls Jackson. I go over these three kings, the top three black stars of the 80s and 90s, all named Michael, microphone. Another peanut butter, and another microphone, com. November 15, 1928. Reese's Peanut Butter Cups introduced. November 18, 1928. Mickey Mouse Steamboat Willie, breakthrough that began Disney's rise. November 26, 1928. Peter Pan play begins. The famous aspect of Steamboat Willie is its use of audio. A pioneer specifically in combining moving pictures with audio. Reese's Cups are famous for combining chocolate and peanut butter. Marketed as combining two greats into something better. Pictures plus audio equals peanut butter plus chocolate. The symbol invokes the same connection of peanut butter to photography but saying how to make it even better. The combining two things is not a secret, but making it a com implies there's another level. Notice what also happened during the same time frame of Reese's. November 15, 1928. Reese's. November 15, 1928. Einstein patent, improved refrigerating. November 16, 1928. First flight to Antarctica Hearst. Antarctica comms are about people visiting a place secretly, often from another country. Fridge comms are about keeping something on ice, as in locking up a secret. Or given water is a symbol of information, the act of freezing it is in preserving it and keeping it from flowing. It was a big moment. Change of an age with the silent era ending. Adding audio to video also made blackmail stronger, but when I watched it looking for comms the impression I got wasn't about blackmail specifically. It was instead a showcase of all the great things that can now be done with comms now that audio is involved. A love letter to a new era of comms. It's much like sliced bread. July 2, 1928. First American TV broadcasting. July 7, 1928. Best thing since sliced bread. Bread equals newspaper comms. Newspaper equals one image at a time. Sliced bread equals sliced images rapid sequence. Greatest thing since sliced bread. In both cases the symbol is for the new era of comms. Blackmail is a part of this, and in fact the original Mickey cartoon has those kinds of comms all over it. They still have blackmail comms in media, but that doesn't mean they were sending comms in every video proclaiming evil intentions. Sadly, I've at times been infected with the same nonsense that pushes disinfo. Making all ops look criminal when really plenty were created to be wholesome and even something people would admire anywhere once decoded. It would be stranger if they didn't do that, but that's for another post. I just wanted to get that off my chest as I've recently been getting far better at identifying friendlier comms. If this stuff ever hopes to see the light of day anywhere but a tiny corner of the internet, that's the kind of thing I need to perfect. The more clear it becomes the layer of complexity tied to companies that are tied to blackmail. Some early Disney movies, for example, they clearly have messaging tied to blackmail, but there also seems to be comms tied to helping the war effort. I believe this is what Fantasia is about. Coordinating, but still tied to blackmail. Getting to prominent people in the enemy group and turning them. Creating a spider web. Others likely have actual moral lessons intended, which I will go into in a future post. I'm not sure yet if I owe any company an apology for things I've suggested about their practices in the past, but one thing is for sure is that I want to make sure I get it right. Whether the answers are positive, negative, I just want to get the answer right. Nintendo also falls in this category. Both companies, I'm confident about some of the comms I've decoded, but the intent is where I get lost at times. It's not always easy to see things through the eyes of someone from another culture, decades ago, speaking in code, with multiple motives. I'll get there though. The peanut butter comms can easily be misunderstood as if they were synonymous with blackmail. Peanut butter is marketed to parents for their children. I looked over dozens and dozens of ads, and with a rare exception or two they are almost universal. Parents with children make their kids sandwiches daily and use peanut butter. It is the role it has in society in America consistently for about a century. Symbols represent association, so that by itself was a big clue. The use of peanut butter as a symbol for perverse ops is a byproduct of children being used in perverse ops. They tie to a number of things that are clearly tied to blackmail after all, but just like with Steamboat Willie, I feel the correct answer is more rudimentary. Shirley Temple and Butterfinger, for example. I go over Shirley Temple as a comm tied to blackmail. Butterfinger and Baby Ruth famously lost the original recipe in the 80s. As in a comm for getting rid of evidence. February 20, 1935. 22. Caroline Michelson, first woman to set foot on Antarctica. February 22, 1935. 2:22. Shirley Temple plus Barrymore, first interracial dance pair on film. 22/22. 22 equals catch 22. Shirley Temple given a commission to capture an entire regiment of military. She can't read equals symbol of the associating girls not being aware of what is happening. An act that's exceedingly easy. Which is another way peanuts are used as a symbol. Let's go into another peanut butter. Skippy. Skippy, for example. The origin is a comic book about a young boy that goes out and does odd jobs. This is not likely inherently blackmail comms, but instead ops involving children. Ops that could include a use tied to blackmail, but does not inherently imply it. Comms experts grow up training on ops, they have to start somewhere. Peanut as a symbol for something tied to children as something so easy they can begin with explains the wide usage and overlap with blackmail. Skippy debut in life 1923. Note that your graduating child Cupids, boy on ham radio ops and mistletoe, kissing symbol, plus kids. Notice Skippy's creator was named Crosby. Same as the most famous radio singer that debut at the same time. 1923 Bing Crosby debut, The Rhythm Boys. 1923 Percy Crosby debut, Skippy, Boy. April 19, 1930. Bing Crosby theater debut, King of Jazz, Saxophone. April 19, 1930. Warner Brothers theater cartoon debut, Sinkin' in the Bathtub, Saxophone. Note King of Jazz included the original Disney Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, which was long in a contract dispute over ownership with Disney versus Universal. This means the cartoon likely has some comms worth exploring. The first of many Talking Kid Bosco cartoons made for theaters. Back then they would play short cartoons before movies. What comms did Warner Brothers decide to push out the gate with cartoons? Bosco the Ink Kid tries to play sax and fails, but when his girlfriend dumps her bathwater into his sax, and then he can play. Notice the Ink Kid plays and she dances and strips. Symbol of the music being enticing people with sex. Suddenly he can get people to listen to his music, his sax. Using girls as a lure, this becomes clear with what happens after. He plays again and ducks follow him. Ops for couples as a boyfriend gets his girlfriend to work as bait. Context of Ink Kid being young and so just more markers for blackmail. Bosco's origin also ties to Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. Peanut butter can be turned into something perverse, but I don't think root symbol has that connotation. It's all in how it's used. Take a look at this one. October 2016, right before the election. A woman smeared peanut butter on cars of conservation group, thinking it was Trump supporting conservatives. A likely threat to those then that don't make their anti-Trump stance clear. Comms to the fence sitters during 2016, they demanded everyone screaming at Trump. Or else they would smear them with peanut butter. January 30, 1976. Bush CIA begins, famous for cleaning up the CIA. February 1, 1976. Elvis Presley famous peanut butter sandwich story. Flying to a dive bar in Colorado shaped like a pyramid to buy a bunch of peanut butter, fool's gold loaf. Other uses of peanut butter as a comm tied to children might be related to the changes made to storing compromising material. This was right before 1977. Porcellian Club. The Peter Pan story doesn't have peanut butter in it, but it does have comms of perversion. The illustrator is Bedford. Additionally, the use of pan potentially ties it to Japan, which is fitting for the timeframe given my decodes of early blackmailing. I go over the collaboration between Japan and American blackmailers in the early 1900s in several posts, but this week I found an even more important connection. November 1902, Peter Pan original story. November 1902, Teddy Roosevelt origin of teddy bear. I've decoded teddy bear in a few posts, but with this it gets even more clear. Keep the Peter Pan connection in mind for a moment. Another important connection is Brooke Shields in Blue Lagoon. Symbol of sedation with Arita berries. Symbol of Arita. Defined as Japanese porcelain. Symbol of Japanese breakables, something to symbolize a fragile child. Remember, Teddy Roosevelt at the time was famously tied to Japan in his judo flipping. Famous movie opening about Facebook origins. Mark Zuckerberg talks is obsessed about getting into a secret club. A major point of the conversation is how Teddy Roosevelt became president because he was part of the Porcellian Club. An obvious symbol of porcelain. In fact, if you search the term you'll get both results as it's that close. But I can confirm it even further. 1791, Porcellian Club begins. 1791 first American ships reach Japan. Porcellian Club began the very first year American ships went to Japan for the first time. That confirms the Japanese connection, and the use of coding reinforces the practice. It gives a strong indication of what they were interested in. As in Japan likely had looser taboos than outside territories. Age of consent is 13 years old there today. Then? Non-existent? Don't forget the South Park comms that reinforced the Teddy Roosevelt as a child predator. Almost every week I find new comms that get us more precision on what took place back then. Those Arita berries I went over were tied to Atari as comms of data management, tied to the ops. I went over the connections of Atari to Studio 54 as strongly connected. I also found one more thing tied to this. Studio 54 had a brief revival in the 1990s. What did Atari do then? April 1996. Short-lived Atari 64 revival through Jaguar, Cat, ends. May 1996. Short-lived Studio 54 revival through Cat ends. Notice the people behind the Studio 54 revival was named Cat. Notice Atari's revival was literally a cat. It's worth noting the studio was turned into a virtual reality game. Which is of note because Nintendo had just crashed with the Virtual Boy a few months before this. The Virtual Boy had literally just killed the entire VR market, and Studio 54 decides that it's the perfect environment to go big into VR. Okay, gotten off topic again. Back to Peanuts. Peanuts section. I've discussed this all from several angles. But of course the most popular, Peanuts, for a long time was a comic book strip about a boy where everything goes wrong. Peanuts was an extension of the Howdy Doody puppet coms, origin of Peanut Gallery. Both coms about kids getting involved in ops. The very first comic being about badmouthing a kid behind his back while telling him to his face you like him. That's a major root of MK ops, as it involves tricking a target into not realizing who is behind their suffering. Turning bystanders into their enemies while you remain free from targeting. The origins of Peanuts. May 27, 1949. Ripley from Ripley Believe It or Not Death. May 27, 1949. CIA Agency Act funding passed. May 29, 1949. Candid Camera begins. June 19, 1952. I've Got a Secret premieres top ratings hit of its time. June 19, 1952. Special Forces created, the Psychological Warfare Center. Ripley inspired Snoopy from Peanuts, which confirms my Snoopy theory, that it ties into snooping and the MK watching. Origin of the character, Woodstock. When the comic transitioned from Misfortunes of Charlie Brown to The Dog and Bird. Comic directly before Woodstock introduction is Lucy saying she just got her monthly check from the CIA, top right. Then all the characters MK Charlie. Because the Misfortunes of Charlie Brown is the point. April 18, 1987. Snoopy brings Bug far away. April 19, 1987. Simpsons debut, Bed Bugs, watch out for bed bugs. Note Snoopy's story focuses on moving a bug somewhere. Lisa hears about bed bugs, symbolism for spying. Subject I go over frequently, but with this new Peanuts connection we can see yet another angle and how big the comms were. 1976. First Apple Mac released $666.66. 1978. Steve Jobs' daughter Lisa Brennan born. 1978. Apple Lisa project begins. Plus 9 years. 1987. Steve Jobs acknowledges for the first time Lisa is his 9-year-old daughter. 1987. Simpsons premieres with Lisa Simpson as the smart 8-year-old daughter of a nuclear power plant worker. But that's not all that's going on with Peanuts. As with most things, I checked the most famous symbols. In Charlie Brown's case it's the Great Pumpkin Special. Origin October 26, 1959, comic directly before involves a much younger girl kissing Linus, shocking him as Snoopy watches carefully. If you can't trust dogs and little babies, whom can you trust? Then Linus is excited about getting presents from the Great Pumpkin, a symbol like Santa Claus. Which is the exchange of gifts for services, in this case ops involving using girls. You can see this further as we go. By the end he tries to get his blanket that she sleeps on, and unlike usual where Charlie Brown is the only one being terrorized, suddenly it's only Linus. What is particularly interesting about this is I already decoded the Great Pumpkin Special, and despite the mid-story with the little girl having no ties at all to Halloween, a similar story is told in it. This answers the mystery on who the Great Pumpkin is. Note the design of Charlie Brown. The same shape as the pumpkin. Which is because he has always represented that. The MK turning into a psychopath. Thus triggering a psychopath against the blind eye Linus. A sister getting rid of a brother while looking like a bystander. Where is Charlie during this? Getting rocks. Famous scenes. The horror story is Lucy as a witch trying to manipulate Charlie Brown into attacking her brother. Casting a spell, so to speak. It's also why Charlie Brown's ghost costume has more eye holes than everyone else, comms of many people lending their eyes, i.e. everyone he meets priming him to get upset at Linus, hence rocks. The conclusion. Girl after luring suddenly angry. Which if you recall how Charlie reacted what should be the result of her feeling a victim. It's all comms about the kinds of psyops being done at the time. Another famous recurring scene with Peanuts is the football pull away. Tricking him into killing himself is his explicit expectation. Some other oddities. More Peanuts. Whale originally named Peanuts, captured October 12, 1977. Eventually moved to Hong Kong and renamed Hoi Wai. 1977 plus captured whale they named Peanuts. The president of the USA during that time was a peanut farmer, Jimmy Carter. I don't have any greater conclusion here, just an oddity I'm sure is important. I'll have a larger whale post in the future that should clarify. Dumbo. Of course, I have to include the most famous film elephant. Big ears to hear. Rat encouraging him to fly, shooting peanuts as ammunition. All about getting the dumb elephants to realize they need to go to war. I suspect the symbolism was in convincing the Republicans, elephant, that they could fly, which in this context is going overseas and fighting in World War II. It was just one of many comm sets I've already gone over tied to that push, and it fits quite well with the story as I skim through it. All about trying to get Dumbo's confidence up to fly. The large ear symbolism is in terms of the methodology in the news propaganda. Trying to get Republicans primed for war, that is, convince them they can fly, which in this context I think is about getting them overseas. It fits the larger ops tied to Red Ryder in psyching up the country to go to war. I covered that in other posts. August 2, 2022, /Big Red Horses / Another one. Peanut butter jelly time. Popular meme with a dancing banana singing about peanut butter jelly. Requires getting into the history. If we look at the history of this song, we'll see it's the only hit from a guy who after recording it shot a police officer, took hostages, and then killed himself. Popular songs are almost always comms and never the choice of the face, as far as I can tell. So someone set him up to send this message before also creating the scenario where he died. Likely jelly equals jealous and peanut butter being Snoop Dogg as a symbol for an icon in the black community, invoking the old Carver comms. They set up the comms of this and then the situation leading to his death, which makes his original song a message of doing something incredibly stupid and dangerous out of jealousy. This fits the episode of Family Guy. Episode where Peter begins trying to hurt Lois to make Stewie like him. So that fits, and the joke is that Peter in beating Lois up to make Stewie happy, he has switched from someone accidentally hurting his wife, not illegal, to being an actual criminal that would face jail time just like Snoop's brother if he continued to pursue adoration in exchange for doing criminal acts. The use of banana is a symbol of slipping, a trap laid for someone to destroy themselves. Okay, now we are done with peanut comms, let's go through some more updates. Updates, global countdowns. In my last post I went over a global countdown that seems to be directed towards the most wealthy. One of these involved India. They recently chose to remove their largest bill from circulation. They asked citizens with stockpiles of cash to exchange it ASAP. This was effectively requesting the richest secured in bunkers stockpiled with wealth to meet with the government. What I didn't know at the time I wrote the post is that this wasn't the only country doing this. March 10, 2023, Nigerians lament as traitors, motorists reject old Naira notes. March 3, 2023, Nigerian court extends old banknotes to December 31 amid cash shortage. In both cases the old banknotes continue to be legal post-deadline, but it's still meaningful as a message. The asking nicely phase. These global ops are tied to the corona ops. Check my intro linked at the top for more on that. This is highly relevant here. April 10, 2023. Biden ends COVID national emergency. April 10, 2023, Nigeria banknote deadline. You already know COVID was a coordinated global countdown of sorts if you've read my posts. October 18, 2019, Official global coronavirus simulation. October 18, 2019, Wuhan Military World Games begins. Plus 30 days, 1 month. November 17, 2019, Wuhan COVID first appears. Dark winter was the simulation origin, and Biden invoked it to continue on his way into the White House. The killing of the economy and tracking forced big players to the table. Just like India/Nigeria recently. There's more to it, but that's the bare minimum to understand it. Another major thing that happened was pressure to flip or face a court in the near future. December 29, 2021, Jeffrey Epstein associate Ghislaine Maxwell guilty on 5 of 6 counts in sex trafficking. December 29, 2021, Pentagon building new secret courtroom at Guantanamo Bay for mid-2023, now. On one hand we have the pursuit of criminals, going after money and pushing to create rats. November 13, 2021, raw sewage and rat droppings in Ghislaine Maxwell's cell, lawyer claims hypersurveillance. But that's not the only thing going on. The MK ops are also crucial to everything going on too. Flipping criminals means many MK subjects no longer have a driver. What can be done for ticking time bombs? The answer, as I've decoded before, ties to the big NFT/crypto push. January 16, 2022, Walmart creates its own cryptocurrency, NFTs, enters metaverse with sales of virtual goods. January 17, 2022, Davy Jones' dog Kraken Seattle rescue dog introduced therapy dog. Saves homeless dogs. NFTs are worthless, but as a way to send money to someone without extensive setup, I doubt anyone could come up with a more elegant solution. MrBeast made much of his money on NFT/crypto. Note his investments in CryptoPunk NFTs were sold 20-30x what he paid for them. His most recent video is about monitoring people aged 1 to 100 in see-through cubicles. Note 69 strips at the start. These are all tied to ops of helping the populations around the world. Neuralink. The same is true of cryptocurrency right now, and this week I've decoded another major angle of what's going on. What is Neuralink? Just like ChatGPT, there are ops running alongside it using it for messaging. Look closely at the presentation given about Neuralink. Cures problems like depression, addiction, anxiety. This is about helping MK victims. How? It involves inserting a coin, Bitcoin, in head. Bottom left. Notice the description of the monkey's experiment victims, tortured, self-mutilation. This is giving a description of the kinds of people that need help ASAP and are to get it. But how? The answer is recruitment. The purpose of the presentation. Hiring volunteers to meet with the victims. This is what the Bitcoin is for. A lifetime of abuse is not easy to approach, and the types of self-destructive tendencies are varied and potentially explosive. This is why for many the approaches will probably be online. This ties into diffuse the propaganda. The unhealthy habits the tech/media ferments. This acts as an accelerant to mentally ill minds, and so some flips switch from hurting indirectly to helping directly. There are hints to this in the reporting. Scientists can interact with the monkey's implant using an iPhone. Using the internet to get into the minds of victims and trying to undo some of the damage. A minefield to be sure, but it appears to be the most humane method at the moment. The money involved is mind-boggling, but then for many victims it's not just giving them an online friend but housing and protection. Note that duck to adopt the shark, an agreement of sorts. January 17, 2022, new teen Kraken Seattle rescue dog introduced therapy dog. January 16, 2022, Walmart creates its own cryptocurrency, NFTs, enters metaverse with sales of virtual goods. How much did the brand new Seattle Kraken cost? December 29, 2018, Tesla China construction authorized. December 29, 2018, giant squid, game, filmed and photographed alive at the surface. April 30, 2021, Tesla just paid back $614 million in loans. Chinese Shanghai Gigafactory. April 30, 2021. Seattle Kraken just paid $650 million expansion fee. Same day. $614 million from Tesla to China and $650 million Seattle Kraken. April 8, 2021. PayPal co-founder, Bitcoin may be a Chinese financial weapon. April 9, 2021. Elon Musk reveals video of monkey playing Pong with its mind using Neuralink. Reminds me of ping pong diplomacy. That last one was more a guess than the rest, but it brings the subject full circle, so it's fine. There's a lot more going on than just helping the victims though. It's about everyone waking up, and helping those most in need is the best place to start. Of course, to really fix things we need to fix the brainwash of all of us. Yes, most men are stronger than most women on average. This is something that should be common knowledge and yet has been clouded with manipulations. Forces push people into ignoring basic reality for the sake of an ideal that at its core has noble intentions, but is one of many Trojan horses for corrupt forces trying to control. Be careful with this though, the moment you apply. The sexes are different, to something like intelligence that's a road that leads to measuring skull sizes of races to define superiority. It's a bad road to begin. There are probably real differences in intelligence between men and women, but unlike athletics, it's literally impossible to measure intelligence differences between sexes and races for one obvious reason. Why? Think about it. Whatever differences there are in intelligence, it's microscopic in comparison to the ongoing societal brainwashing that has caused divergences in the sexes and races. Men and women and races are all brainwashed differently. None of us have even come close to reaching our potential. Given this, how could we even begin to compare ourselves to one another when we have all been sabotaged into handicap after handicap? How long have you read my blog? How many layers have I uncovered? What would people be if they grew up knowing these things? Knowing actual things rather than brainwash on top of brainwash. That path to genius is something all can achieve, and this is something all people of all sexes and races could get behind. Telegram chat. Join the Decoding Blog Telegram group. Begin decoding. Send leads. This has been Elephants and Peanuts.